hey, I know things have been pretty challenging the past several months with COVID-19, and then for other things that might have been going on for you, that I think that we could all kind of use a break. And what I also know about people who come through really challenging, difficult experiences, and they come through it, and you almost would think, wow, I can't believe they made it through that. They seem like they just didn't let it do them in. They seem kind of light, kind of even happy. What I'm going to say, joyful. What's going on? How did that happen? So because this isn't just about what's happening for you right now with the pandemic, but in general, one of the things I really help people to do is maintain what I call like the balance of mood in their lives, no matter what's going on, so that life isn't such a struggle for them. I came up with what I'm going to call my 7-day joy challenge. So I hope you're going to join me in it. I'm actually going to start like probably a half an hour after I finish this video. So I hope you'll be joining me, but you can do it. You can start it whenever works for you. But I hope that you won't wait, because you've been feeling kind of funky, out of sorts, like this thing, a lot of stuff's been happening to you, which kind of stinks. Yeah, acknowledge that. I know that, but it doesn't have to be as awful as you're likely letting it be, because you haven't been remembering that, something like COVID, things happening to you, you still have a lot of say about not taking it and saying, I'm going to, figure out a way that I'm not going to this is not going to run the show. I'm going to run my own show. So before I get into the nitty gritty of what the fun, it's going to be light, it's really going to be a fun experience for all of us. I want to just run through what I think of as the most common obstacles to joy, because you may not realize that you may be doing things or not doing things as you move through your days, sort of letting some things happen, letting your mood happen to you. And if you're not aware of them, you may not know that there's some really pretty simple practices you could put in place that make a huge difference in terms of your mood. And when we're talking about whether we're going to call it joy or happiness or well-being, a difference between people who are kind of passive about it and don't know is that a lot of times they're just not informed, and they're merely missing out on life being a lot more comfortable, a lot more pleasant, a lot more fun than it needs to be, even in a time of crisis like this. So real quick, one of the biggest joy killers that I know of is comparison. When you think about whatever's going on for you during a pandemic, during a crisis or not, if you notice that you are looking out and you're paying attention to other people's stuff, and it leaves you feeling like you're one down, like they're happier. And right now, the way I love social media, love Facebook and Instagram and all this great Twitter has its values at times too. However, we all know, I probably don't even need to say this, that what do we see the photos? We see everybody sort of at their best, at their happiest. People don't post videos of like their worst moments, their tough moments, the moments where they're feeling doubtful or in difficulty. They don't. So now I think it's even more of a phenomenon in our culture that we look at, wow, I don't feel so great. I'm not loving this. This is hard. And everybody else is okay. That is a real joy killer, and it's also not accurate. So be mindful of that. If you notice yourself in a low mood, just feeling just sort of life is not good enough for me. I'm not loving this. Pay attention to what you do, and really what it's about is paddling your own canoe. Don't think about other people. When you're too busy figuring out what makes you tick, doing things that make you feel productive with people that you love, you're way too busy to be thinking about how you're making out compared to the others, right? You're too busy making it happen for yourself. So that's number one. Another one is to be aware that when you're feeling kind of life's a kind of boredom, that's something that I think is really important. Right now, particularly when you have a crisis situation, challenging situations where there's obviously, being very realistic, a lot of negative stuff, problem solving, a lot of challenges coming at you, I like to look at it as this is a time for you to realize whether it's a lot of stuff coming at you or a time of your life where nothing's really awful or really great, but it's just sort of, that's not for me. That's not good enough for you. I want you to have more of that. So pay attention to that. If there's boredom going on, it could be just that, whatever the experience is sort of set up naturally in your life, sometimes they're a little out of balance and there's not enough, there's a ton of the work to do, the things I have to do, the challenges right now, the problem solving, the things are not so great. Major losses for people that have lost loved ones. that's all going on. That's a time where we have to be a little bit more proactive in our lives to say, hey, look, if it's missing, life's not handing it to me, because there's been a lot of turds thrown right now. But also when you're just sort of feeling long when this pandemic has passed, there are a lot of people I know who it's sort of, they don't realize that when life's not, sort of naturally having amazingly powerful, joyful moments, then sometimes it's up to us to create them. And that's not something that I think we're oriented to think about. We're dealing with troubleshooting and problem solving. Most people, when you say, don't say, oh, wow, that's right. It's up to me to pay attention and intentionally plan ways to bring joy back to my life. And that's part of what the 7-day challenge is all about. So that's the second one. A third one I think you want to look at is just overall, are you kind of a negative thinker, a cynic? And if that's true, that's having a big effect on you. And it's probably beyond the scope of one video. You'll probably want to talk with close friends who can give you their take on it and say, hey, look, how could that be different? How do positive people think? You could do some reading about it, positive thinking versus sort of cynic, critical thinking. That's a big one for people, and it doesn't have to be that way. When I hear people say, hey, that's just how I am, and yeah, I've been depressed or anxious for 2 decades, I challenge that and I say, no, it's just that you've developed habits of cynicism and negative critical thinking. And you can choose, yeah, it's got to take some work, and probably don't do it on your own, whether you're working with people that really care about you and can give you feedback, or a counselor, or do the reading. Like, how does a positive person think? How does an optimist think? You could sort of take that on until you develop that new habit for yourself. That's a big one, just people's ways of thinking. I can take 2 people, same day. One's a pessimist, the other's an optimist. Their experience of the world, it's like a different life, right? What does that tell you? The power of their thinking to make things be different. Amazingly powerful. So remember that. And another one, I'd sort of getting down to brass tacks, but if you're feeling the heaviness, which is reasonable right now, if you're feeling that sort of blah, like, oh, what's the point? This is just drudgery. It's going on too long. I want you to take some time to pay attention to anything in your physical behaviors or your daily routine that is weighing you down, the opposite of joy, weighing you down. That could look like your diet. That could look like what you're doing with your body, exercise or not. Because you want to be mindful that, particularly right now, we're talking about bringing in things that combat the heavy. So take a look at physically, like, what am I actually doing every day? And the only difference between people who are continuing to be that way and not is, they're saying, hey, look, I didn't even realize I was doing that. So this is going to take a little bit of thoughtfulness, what we talk about, doing things intentionally, which is, if you were to stop listening to this video and take 5 minutes to say, what have I been doing lately? Like, specific actions that lift me up versus the things that pull me down. You're gonna find a lot of juice there, and then you can just decide to be different about it. Now, one of the things I'm going to tell you about the 7-day challenge is second. One of the things that I love about this is, as I was deciding why I wanted to have my blog be about joy and also to create this video for you, it was me remembering readings I've done where we have taken a hard look, those of us who are really oriented in what's, positivity, well-being researchers, people who said, look, we live in such an affluent, abundant time. What's going on? Why aren't people happier? We take a look, we analyze, we say to people who've come through very difficult times and say, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? So it really struck me that there are many moments that we know of where people went through incredibly difficult times. I'm sure you may be one of them, or you may know someone like that. And you're kind of left thinking, oh my gosh, you know the person, they're pretty happy, pretty balanced, pretty optimistic, just kind of enjoying life. And then maybe you find out some of the stuff that happened and you're like, how did they do that? They did the very things that I just described to you. In that moment of challenge and difficulty, they knew to pay attention to how they were deciding to be around it. And that's another thing. Oh, before I tell you about the challenge, the other thing I wanted to mention, another thing I noticed was particularly around the issue of grief and loss when we had a crisis. And especially if you have lost someone from the pandemic or another experience, it's been my experience as a grief expert that there comes a time after the acute phase, the really initial agony of it, where the body starts to feel and the mind starts to feel weighed down. And if I were to bring up the issue of, it could be important for you to balance that out right now. And let's talk about bringing the positive and the joy back, giving you a break. There's an element of almost guilt about it. Like, this experience has happened. You've been in crisis mode. You've been in mourning or loss mode. And it's sort of foreign to you. But also, I hear language about people almost not really being willing to give themselves permission. And so I want to say, whatever the experience is for you, even if you're having a rough day, you have a lot of say and a lot of power over how you manage it. And that if you relate to anything of what I just said, I got to tell you, you have a right to be happy. And you have a right to have some joy in your life. I helped someone recently and I knew because I'd done it myself after a pretty major loss, that there was a day where I just said, I don't feel like feeling like crap today. I'm tired of this. I need a break. And I decided to choose joy and have a joyful day. And that didn't mean that I didn't honor the loss. It didn't mean I didn't care about that person. It didn't mean that I didn't have to feel guilty about it. It meant that I was being powerful in my life. And I take that to heart, that when I shared that with someone else, it made a big difference for them too. And they said, yeah, I gave myself permission to take a break and to know that it's okay for me to decide to bring some joy back into my life. That's all right. Because I kind of needed that too for myself, to sort of lift myself up so that I could get back at it. And yeah, I went back to having moments where she continued to be sad about the experience and mourning it, but she realized that. So whether it's an actual death or loss, maybe recently for you with the pandemic, or just a general crisis, I don't think that's a really common thing for people to know, that it's not only okay, but it's very responsible of you in terms of you taking charge of your life and being accountable and owning your stuff, that you also give yourself permission to say, you know what, it's responsible of me, because it's only going to be coming from me. I'm the only one that can give myself that permission to balance my mood out, because it doesn't do any good. You're not helping anybody by saying, I'm supposed to stay in drudgery. This is a crappy time. I really want you to consider that. So in terms of when I was talking about those experiences, that when you think about it, I want to give you an example of something that I had heard. Actually, it's from my former husband. It was an example. The first time I learned of this, he was blessed with helping people in Bosnia after the war in 1997. And he talked to me about these two little children, brother and sister apparently, maybe like 5 and 3. And he said, Lee, I saw these kids one day, and they were near my hotel. So he saw them, I think maybe 3 times in the couple weeks he was there. And he said, these kids were out there and they were scavenging food from a dumpster. 5 and 3, they were out securing their food, and he saw them laughing and playing. And something happened where he could tell, like, the older sister was helping the little brother, maybe like pulling his hand to lead him away when they were done. And they sat and they squatted. They couldn't sit. It's broken glass. It's a war zone. They squatted and they had their snack meal. And then they brought some with them. He didn't know. Was it for other family members? Maybe a sick or injured mom or dad? He doesn't know. But that scenario struck me. Those two little ones, you bet. So now they're, I don't know, in their 20s. They figured it out at a very young age because something happened to them that wasn't something they brought on themselves, but they figured it out. That's the kind of experience I want you to know to create. That's a pretty extreme example, but I bet you money if I could go back and find those kids, I bet you they're pretty well adjusted and balanced. They've figured out a way to balance things out so that no matter what life handed them, they're like, you know what? We know that we can take in any day, we can go and find a way to play and be joyful. And the beauty of it with the innocence of youth is it wasn't like they were so wise and genius that they were like, we're going to go out and do this. They just did it because that's human nature. Human nature is to figure out a way to be happy because we all get to, right? All right, great. So 7-Day Joy Challenge. What I want you to do, probably to be most efficient, check out, it's up on my blog. And I started out in case some of you are a little rusty on this. If it's not in your habit to do it, I give you tons of ideas to get you started. But this is about for all of us because we want to keep it light, right? We want to be like those kids in the middle of a war zone, eating out of a dumpster. They're laughing and playing and being silly with each other. That's what I want us to do right now. So no matter we're taking a break from all the yuck, and we are giving ourselves permission. We're going to do that. So it's going to be at least 30 minutes a day. At least 30 minutes a day. I want you to treat this like it's homework, because it's about a huge booster shot. A huge booster shot. The idea is we are going to say, look, COVID, you're not going to end us. You're not going to affect our mood. We are coming in with the big guns to combat that, because I know it's a game changer. So take a look. I can give you lots of ideas to get started. But this is what I want you to do. If you already know what you do to have fun, go at it. You can turn the video off now. That's fine. But if you're not in the custom of doing it, because you've been in problem-solving mode and kind of yuck mode, I want to help you. Just a couple ways that you can kind of get in touch with that. Think back to the most recent time where you said, oh my God, that was a great day. I had a blast. I was goofy, especially for those of you who are adults listening. I was kind of silly. I was goofy. Why? Because you were just sort of not having a care in the world. You were really connected. Oh, that's one more thing. Another obstacle to joy is people that are not being present. If you're thinking about the past or the future. So another one is, what we're doing is we're saying we are going to do 30 minutes and we're going to do something, at least 30 minutes, more if you can. We're going to do something that the only purpose of it is to have fun. This is not results oriented. This is not, I encourage you, like if you're a runner, we're not like going out, we're going to do 5 miles and we're going to time it. No. We're talking about just pure joy, no results, just pleasure in and of itself to get us back into the swing of that sometimes the world and our circumstances call for us to bring that in a very powerful way. So if you haven't figured out exactly, you aren't already thinking, oh, I already know what I'm going to do. It's so great. Think about what you've done recently, the last time you had it. And if you haven't been doing this, which a lot of people I know haven't, they've been about serious business and thinking that they're, denying themselves joy is somehow like being responsible, which it's not. No, you may have to look a little bit further. So I go into more specifics in the blog. You can find it on my website, leodeskulke.com. But we're talking about keep looking farther back. And one of the things that I love and why the Bosnian experience was so meaningful to me was for some people who are really hardworking, they got to go way back, because what happened when we were kids? Our job was to go to school and have fun and play, right? Get back in touch with that. So if you have to go way back, think about the stuff you used to do when you were a kid. Think about what lights you up, whether it's, the people that you can be around right now, given being responsible social distancing. Whatever does it for you, I want you to get giggly. I want you to get silly. I want you to have fun. I want you cranking up the tunes. I want you dancing. Just absolutely, you get it, I'm sure. So I want that to be happening for you. The goal is pure, just joy. And it is about fun, but I promise you this is very planful and intentional on my part, that I think that it's about, because one of the things I do in working with people is empowering you to figure out if something's out of whack with you, how you bring that back into your life. So it's fun, it's light, but it's also, it will really make a difference in your life. So I hope you decide to take on the 7-Day Joy Challenge. Check out the specifics. There's a huge long list on the blog post at the website if you still are feeling stuck, because I don't want you to wait. I want you to get started as soon as possible. Let's have fun with this. Let's remember we are at our most powerful when we are taking charge of our lives, and anything that's out of whack, we bring it back in. All right, take care. Have a joyful day.